If ever there was a verse the Lord Jesus would long for his people in America to listen to today, if ever there was a verse the Lord Jesus would long for his people in America today to listen to, then I believe it is Matthew 5 verse 13. Ye are the salt of the earth, but, and I believe Christ weeps over the words that follow, but if the salt have lost his savor, wherewith shall it be salted? It is thenceforth good for nothing. It is thenceforth good for nothing, but to be cast out and to be trodden under foot of men. One of the greatest theologians in the history of the church said that the most accurate interpretation of this verse and the meaning Christ has for his church in these words would go like this: Ye are the salt of the earth. You are the world's protection. You are the world's protection, Church of Jesus Christ. To make it tolerable to live in. To make it tolerable to live in. But if you lose your effectiveness, your vital reality, your impact, what will happen to the world? This is essentially what Christ asks his church generation upon generation. What will happen to the world? And you yourselves will eventually be thrown out by them, your religion considered worthless. If you lose your vital reality, Church of Christ, you will be thrown out by them, disregarded by them, despised by them, your religion considered worthless. Has that happened in America, Church of Jesus Christ? Has that happened in America, Church of Christ? We blame politicians, lack of censorship, Hollywood, the influence of the internet. We blame all these things as the means by which our country is morally corrupting. The decadence that sweeps like an avalanche that no man seems to be able to stop. No one seems to be able to slow down. And defiling everything in its path, even 10-year-old children, filthy. No one seems to stop. We blame the politicians, we blame the media, we blame the lack of censorship. But I, in deep grief and shame and fear, dare to say to you tonight, I blame the church. If the salt of the earth is effective, as God intended it to be, corruption stops. Corruption cannot advance. I believe the Church of Christ stands at a terrible crisis of having lost its effectiveness in this generation. I believe the Church of Christ stands at a terrible crisis of having lost its effectiveness. And beloved, look at what has become of the world. If that is true, look at what has become of the world, Church of Christ, through you losing what you should have been. The salt It stops corruption. That's all it is, that the only thought Christ has in mind, expounded to 100 degrees. I have one thing in mind. It stops the advance of sin when we're right with God. And I believe deeply that the Sermon on the Mount is given by Christ to his church generation upon generation to show us the stepping stones by which we can find revival. I believe the stepping stones Christ places in the Sermon on the Mount can bring about revival throughout his whole church if we would just take them. And I believe with all my heart this would result in a great awakening of the unsaved throughout this land and world. But God waits for his people. Don't tell me it's all divine appointment. God waits for his people. When will they take the stepping stones God has placed in his word, in the greatest sermon that has ever been preached in the history of the church?